As always, the Shamrock Show is brought to you by the law firm of Stephen Reck and Scott Camisar. Scott is my guy, the best legal mind in the business. Hit him up for any of your personal injury or civil needs. StephenReck.net, StephenReck.net, or on Facebook.
Welcome to the Shamrock Show. Sit down, have a listen, and go fuck yourself.
The Shamrock Show.
Let me introduce the struggling artist himself, Trev Allen.
Hello.
What's up, brother?
Not much, man. Just I took a week off. I said, fuck it. I could get some I could get some shit done with my podcast. And I did. I recorded a few episodes, so I've got some in the tank. And I got to go on. I got to guest spot on another podcast. And here I am guesting on the Shamrock Show. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, man. It's a busy week for you. It's been a busy week for me. This is actually this is my third podcast of the week that I've recorded, and I've never done that before. So I had this planned with you, and then somebody who I wanted to get on hit me up after and was like, yo, I can get in this date. So I'm recording it, but that's going to come out like a week after yours. And then I did the MMA one on Wednesday. So I'm feeling in the groove and ready to rock, man.
That's good. So it's cool, right? So like when you schedule guests and then something pops up and you can have another guest do another time, it's always good to do it. And then whoever has something going on to promote, right, you'll put them up front. That's what I've learned anyway. That's what I've like. So I had I did one. It just dropped this past week with a guest, and he was, they had something to promote that was coming out this week. So I made sure after we recorded it that I was going to have it done for the week of, so they could promote it,
Yeah. And if I had one that had like, more urgency, maybe I'd release them differently, but neither one had anything that had any time sensitivity on it, as far as I know. But the other guy is someone who I didn't know. It was like somebody who I was interested in talking to, and I hit up and I was like, yo, can we do this? So when someone is doing you a favor like that, like I didn't want to be like, oh, hey man, I've actually got one of my homeboys coming on, and
you got to do it, dude. But
also
take them all.
You're my boy, and I wasn't going to reschedule you because you just hit the 1 year anniversary of your podcast, which we'll get into. But I've been on it technically 3 times, so it's about time that we got you over on mine, man.
Yeah. And whatever, it comes around. You know what I mean? Like I've had other podcasters on mine, and sometimes it just doesn't fit, and that's fine. That's not why I don't have people on so I can come on theirs. You know what I'm saying? Because like some of the stuff, like I find the person interesting and maybe not exactly their podcast or whatever, but I'm happy to be here. I always wanted to be like, I wanted to come on your podcast, but I didn't know where I would fit here. You know what I'm saying? But with what you do, you're a free form, so it works. And I'm honored that you picked. I texted you earlier. I'm like, what are we gonna talk about, dude? You have all these people that like do shit, and then I'm some fucking bum.
Well, one, I disagree on that, but like as far as my podcast goes, right? So when I started it off, I was renting a studio to do it, and I was paying too much money for that, but the quality was great, and I didn't know really what I was doing technically, and I didn't realize the quality of the Zoom shit. I had never used it, and this is fucking great,
Yeah.
But so at the paying a few hundred, I was paying I think $300 an episode. So it's like I was only doing one once a month. That's how I could have bought a Hyundai. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
So my plan was, well, let me try to start with this by getting people who they have a big audience. Let me start with that. So then later down the road, I can talk to anybody I want to. Oh, I just is like my friend, and I think they're interesting or whatever, And I think one, I've done enough of that. 2, this allows me to do whatever because I'm being way more active. And 3, which should actually be number 1, I wouldn't put you into that category. I think that you have a big following. You have a great Twitter following for your podcast. You have a really established podcast. Probably with more episodes than I have at this point because I've been inactive and I've been out. I just hit 2 years. I did my first one, 2 years ago. Well, March will be 2 years.
Yeah.
So, I wouldn't say that about you, but I appreciate the flattery.
Well, I mean, technically, my podcast, the Struggling Artist podcast, started in 2017. But it went on hiatus. It went on the back shelf and it came back. I relaunched it January of 2020, and it was just it was a much different podcast. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't the same, but the name, I wanted to keep the name. I wanted to keep that going. I even talked to Greg. I was like, if you want me to change the name, I will. And he told me to run with it if I wanted to. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, I caught that backstory on, well, two things. So I caught that backstory on your anniversary episode when you were talking about how, you kept the name. And two, I didn't realize what had happened. And I was confused when it was your 1 year anniversary. I was like, man, I swear this guy had a podcast way longer ago than a year. But I got CTE and I'm old. I have like no idea what time it is. But myself, my podcast is evolved into something different than I thought it would too, just like you're saying yours did. And actually starting now, mine is only big guys with beards and bald heads. That's it. You can see requirement to come on my podcast. Childhood crush Pam Anderson wants to come on. She got to shave that dome, bro.
Yeah. That's awesome. Essentially, what are podcasts? They're basically pretend radio shows, right? So when you do a podcast and you have a certain idea of what's going on and what you want to do, when it changes, it's not, you kind of got to roll with the punches, right? Let it go organically. And I like what your show has become. I mean, you go all out, dude. My backdrop, I don't do the video thing. I would like to at some point, but right now I'm just doing the audio thing until until the video part. I don't know. I probably could just do both, but right now I'm not. But I see yours and you got this awesome backdrop. You got I like the sign, the Shamrock show, and it's got the episode in it. You're and I mean, before you could tell how much you care about your podcast, man, because you're taking these steps. You were renting a studio for $300 a month. That's an episode. That's crazy. I would never be able to do that. You know what I'm saying? But you have a vision and you run with it. Just because it's changed a little bit, it doesn't mean it's not what you wanted or whatever. We're growing,
Yeah. So as far as the video goes, that's how I prefer my podcast. Especially I know for whatever reason in the independent podcast world, there's a lot of hate for Joe Rogan. Everyone, whatever I see on Twitter, all these little indie podcasts.
Anybody who makes it, dude, they're gonna shit on. It's just the way it is.
As generic as it is, it's my favorite podcast, and I like to watch it because, what I'll do with mine now that I have full creative control is I'll edit in if we talk about something, I'll throw up the picture here, video clip over it and stuff. And I like that even when I'm driving in my car, I might be looking at the video, right? But I'll have it down there, and Joe Rogan will be like, Jamie, pull that up, and I'll fucking look. You know what I mean? I always wanted it to be a video podcast, but a lot of people asked me for the audio version because I want to listen to it while I'm at the gym or while I'm driving.
Right.
So then I started ripping, maybe 6 episodes ago, I backlogged all of them in audio and started doing them audio wise.
I was a big fan of it. I mean, I used to watch. I was watching when you had the videos. I would watch them, but I remember. I think I might have been one of the people that asked you about the audio thing, and
you were.
And a big thing. A lot of people listen in their cars, and that's I mean, I do. I'm on the road. Sometimes I'm driving 2,000-3,000 miles in a week, so I'm on the road. So I like that part of it. And I guess that's how I went to broadcasting school, and I really wanted to get into radio. I didn't at first. I went there for writing, and they lied to me about the writing. It was a 1-day course. It wasn't this big class they talked about. So I ended up liking radio, and I wanted to get into radio. Maybe not so much on air, but I like to write copy, commercials and stuff. I was good at writing that stuff. So maybe to me, that's why I took the radio side approach of it. You know what I'm saying? Of I wanted just to do audio. I never really thought about doing video, but then every phone, every tablet, every computer now has a built-in camera. So why wouldn't you? You know what I'm saying? So I see I'm not going to do it until I feel like I have enough to make it up to what you're doing, man. Like I said, your backdrop's awesome.
It was a gift. My girlfriend got it for me for Christmas, actually. So I used to have the backdrop with like my logo on it with that proper.
Even that, I love that logo. Yeah.
But I think this is way more popping. And then I throw my logo like up on the screen, you know, with the backdrop, you know.
Yeah.
I just think it's catchy, man. And I hope that maybe somebody just be scrolling through YouTube and see the backdrop and be like, oh shit, you know what I mean? And what's this?
Right.
And you hear me rambling along, you know.
And like with the old episodes that I reposted leading up to like the debut of the new podcast and everything, I think I'm like 50 something episodes in. So like I want to wait. Like I don't want to at this point, and I think you might agree with me. Once you get so far into it, like I don't want to just do a video and have it just be this, like my fucking living room that you're looking at, you know what I mean? Sometimes I forget to take my dog's collar off and she's jingling around, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah, I've been there, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of those things like until I think I'm absolutely ready to do a video, I'll wait until then. Cause like I said, once you get 20, 30, 40, 50 episodes in, it's really like, there's no turning back. Like you don't really want to put out anything that's not as polished as everything else you've been putting out, right?
Yeah, and that's how I feel, especially after my last episode. I feel like my last one with Brian from Proper 12, the video, the audio, the look, I came up with that frame that, you know, that I went around to try to make the Zoom look a little bit better. From here, like I really have something that I like, you know, and I'm going to, like I said, that's kind of where I'm at. What you were just saying, like from here on out, everything's got to be on target. And I would never go back to a studio, dude. I would never. That was just a waste of money. I did buy a camera, and you know I might end up doing some in-person ones at some point. But I'll have to have somebody over the house or whatever.
Yeah.
I end up doing.
Right.
But that being said, let's talk about your podcast. So
sure,
your podcast is called The Struggling Artist.
Yep.
Great name.
Thank you.
I know you get like a little, I don't, insecure is not the word, but you feel like that your guests think you're talking about them, like you're having struggling artists on,
right.
but you're considering yourself the struggling artist. And I also know that this has been said to you, but I think it was Dan that said it, but it's really true. Anyone who's a creative is struggling. So like nobody would feel, whether it's some idiot like me coming on your show, or if you had Brad Pitt on your show, I'm sure Brad Pitt struggles with his craft, you know, like, or, you know, any artist of any type. So I think that it's really apropos and a great title, bro.
Thanks. I mean, do you want me to give like a quick brief history for your
brief history? We can have the anthology, because I do want to talk about what you originally started it as and where it's come to. So
all right, yeah, I'll start then. All right,
the floor is yours, brother.
All right, cool. So like back in 2017, my old co-host Greg, him and I, we've worked on creative projects before, and we were talking about doing a podcast. And again, I took the same kind of approach. Like if we're gonna do this podcast, we need to make it perfect. You know what I'm saying? So I recorded like 10 or 15 episodes with him that we never even made it. Like it was just us doing different kind of, like we were like, maybe we could do a variety show, maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that, and it just never really worked out. So then we came up with the struggling artist idea, where he was like, all right, we could talk to like local artists and talk to them and kind of get involved and promote their stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And I was like, but I kind of want to talk to them about more than just that. Like I want to talk about like them struggling, not because they think they're an imposter. So so to me, I wanted to kind of like bring out like the human in an artist, where people will see like a musician and they think they have this like extravagant lifestyle, you know, making millions of dollars, and at the end of the day, or pro fighters. Look at our friends that are pro fighters. People think because you're a pro fighter that you're making all this money, and they do make money. But when they're not in a training camp and they don't have a fight and they don't know when they're going to have another fight, what are they doing? They're out there, they're breaking rock. You know what I mean? They're on roofs, laying down freaking shingle. You know what I'm saying? So like, I feel like that part needs to come out more. And that's kind of where I started with that's where him and I kind of started with the whole podcast. And that was like, we ran that 2017 to 2018 and up until I moved away to Tennessee. And then we had to put it on a hiatus. So that's the start of it. But now it's evolved into something where I have guests on, and I think it has something to do. At the time I relaunched the podcast, I was in a really bad mental place. I'm very open about my mental health because for years I wasn't, and people would just think I was just some fucking psychopath, and maybe I am a little bit, but at the same time, like, it's not an intentional. I'm not intentionally being a fucking douche or whatever. Like, I actually struggle with mental health issues, and so like when I shut down and I don't want to talk to anybody, it's like I'm not being a dickhead. I just don't want to talk, because I just can't. Like, I internalize too much of it. So now, like, I don't know, years of therapy helped me. And I didn't start therapy until I was like fucking 35 or 34 or some shit like that. But now it's like, when I relaunched the podcast, I was in a really bad place mentally. And for some reason, we end up talking about mental health a lot. We talk about recovery a lot because I've had guests on that have been in recovery, just life struggles. So it went to be like, all right, let's talk to artists about shit, to me just wanting to talk to people and learning their stories and talking about life and struggles and how they got there and how they get through it. And it's kind of evolved. And I always say, like, I break all the rules of podcasting because podcast is a very like niche thing. So like if you have a music podcast, that's what you are. You're a music podcast. You know what I'm saying? If you have an MMA show, that's what you are. If you're a free form one, you're having guests on, but you always follow a path. My path is fucking zigzagging, fucking looping around and everything else. You know what I mean? So, but it works for me, and that's a very selfish thing to say, but the feedback I get from people who listen, and I think at the end of the day, we all want to touch somebody, right? Like, not in a sense, but like, or in an inappropriate sense, but we want to touch their soul. Like, we want to, you know what I'm saying? Like, as a creator, no matter what it is, you're putting your vulnerability out there for people to become vulnerable with your art. And I feel like whether it's podcasting or fucking, rapping or fucking singing country music or whatever it is, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. So that's kind of what the podcast has become. I don't know. I like it. I think it's interesting. I talk to really cool people, and it's probably the only social activity I really get now with this whole COVID shit going on. So,
man, there's so much there I want to touch on. One, I agree with you, like, on the path, right? So, like, when I'm thinking when I was starting this podcast, I'm like, well, what kind of podcast am I going to do? And I kind of want to, like, talk this out on this podcast, about podcasting, because I consider you to be really professional. Like, I go to you like, hey, I was thinking about doing this or that. I go to you when I have questions about podcast stuff because I really respect your creative and your experience in it, man. So when I'm like, do I want to do, like, MMA is my love. It's like my go-to, like, recreational activity, whether it's watching it or going to the gym and training it. And then I'm like, if I do just an MMA podcast, that pigeonholes me into, like, if I want to have somebody else on for, like, if I get the chance to talk to somebody, like, interesting from any other way, shape, or form. And then I look at people who have these podcasts that are dedicated in one direction, and their audience is really big because they know what to expect. Like, someone could listen to my podcast 1 week and really love it, and 2 weeks, the next week or whatever, 2 weeks later, whenever I put it out, 6 months later, sometimes they'd be like, oh, this was really boring or just not interesting. So they don't necessarily subscribe as much because it's not about me. It's about the guest. But I think for myself, that's just the way it is because, like you said, this is a soul. Not only this is like a social thing. I was looking forward to chopping this up with you all week. But it's also it's a creative outlet for myself, and I don't want to be pigeonholed myself into creativity. I want to be able to go on and talk with whoever and show up, whatever. And even if 2 people listen to it, if I thought it was really awesome, that matters to me. But like you said, it's vulnerable. Like, you don't want to put it out and be like, and then people are like, man, this thing sucked. You know what I mean? Because this is just me and you talking, right? So if I put this out and nobody likes it, it means they either didn't like me or they didn't like you or they didn't like both of us. And whether you're in first grade going to school or whether you're 39 making a podcast, it sucks when somebody doesn't like what you did,
Yeah. So like I have a theory about like if people don't like, people have to listen to it to not like it, right? So if you're just not, if you got to think what's going on in the world. So like when someone comes to me, they're like, oh man, look at my downloads are so down, and it's like, all right, so you had Christmas, New Year's, and then we had a fucking coup attempt. You know what I mean?
I had one that week, and it's the worst views I've ever had. You know?
Yeah. You know, and then you have the inauguration. Like it's been a busy time right now. You just got to roll with it. And you know, if someone doesn't like an episode, I feel like I said, I don't think the numbers would have to deal with that. I think feedback would. If someone was like, yeah, this is boring, or you know what I mean, or maybe the week after might suffer, or whatever, the next episode. But I will say this when it comes to this stuff. I've done podcasts before with people, and we record, and then I go back to edit it, and I'm listening to it. And if it's like a friend of mine or something, and I'm like, well, this is a little too chummy. Like, I don't think anyone's gonna gain anything out of. I have casual episodes at work, but like there's some where it's just like one time, this was years ago, me and a buddy were doing one, and it was just basically, I hadn't seen him in a year. So the whole episode was just us catching up. And I'm like, no one's going to want to hear that. So that's when you got to make that executive decision. Like, all right, this is going to have to go away. I'm not going to be able to post this because it's just not going to, you know what I mean? Like, so there is an element, like a professionalism, business, whatever you want to call it, element to figuring out what's going to work and what's not.
Get back to your mental health thing, dude. Anybody out there who's like thinks that no one's listening to them, fuck it, do a podcast. People will listen to you. You know what I mean? And
right.
Even just to verbalize stuff for yourself is good. But I think mental health, you know, that's something I really enjoy in your episodes, because I think as a whole, right, mental health is kind of stigmatized in the world, in the cultures, you know, just as a whole. But then we're gonna bring it down even more. I think it's stigmatized more for men than it is for women. That's my opinion. And then bring it down even more, I think guys who are like you, 6'3" and fucking like a big
6'5", sir.
6'5". Sorry, man. Like you're just people just look at you like, oh, you're supposed to just fucking deal with shit. You know what I mean? And to put myself in that same thing, like, oh, this Sean, he fucking acts like a tough guy, so probably nothing bothers him. And you know, everybody out there has stuff. Nobody's like, especially, man, being, I've said this, and I've rode this horse to death. Being off social media has been really, really good for me.
Yeah.
You know, like my Instagram is gone, and there's things I miss about it, and there's things about this podcast that have suffered because of you, like popularity wise. And Facebook is, I don't use it anymore other than just to post my podcast. I don't read people's shit, because anytime, even when I log on just to post my stuff, I'll see something that makes me want to strangle somebody.
Yeah.
So I knew, like, and I say that jokingly, like I really mean it. Like I would go on Facebook and my blood would like boil, and it would fuck up my day. I would be so angry. Right. You know, I've just always been a hothead and a little bit of, you know, fucking.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
So for my own true mental health, I had to get rid of social media. It's just, it's too much for me. And I love that you bring up mental health, man. I think it's an important topic to get on. And, you know, I'd like to bring it up more myself in my own podcast, because you never know who's listening, where it might just strike a chord like, shit, you know, I'm going through that too.
Right. And I don't beat home on it. Like, I don't, you know, I'm not like, I don't, again, I'm not a mental health podcast by any means. Like, I do everything wrong, and I talk about all the wrong shit I do because of it. You know what I mean?
Don't do as I say, not as I do. You know?
Yeah, but I the whole being, like, when I do mention it, and it's not even on purpose. It's always organic. But when I do mention it, I could edit it out if I wanted to, you know, but I don't, because like someone out there might be going through something similar, and if they happen to listen and they hear it, and they don't feel so as alone. And I think that's a big part of mental health is a lot of us, because I mean, Sean, we're the same age. Growing up, we weren't raised to like talk about your feelings and shit, you know, especially an Irishman. I'm not trying to be racist, but like Irish people, like they weren't. I mean, really, you weren't. You know what I'm saying?
Well, we came from the generation that wasn't like today, where everyone talks, you know, maybe to the other extreme, right? Where everyone's feelings are talked about to, you know, an overstated point, where everybody thinks that their feelings matter so much in every situation, right? Where sometimes things just, your opinion, your fuck your feelings if somebody says, you know what I mean? But and I think it's good to find a happy medium. But you're right, dude. Growing up in the '90s, dude, we were just out playing in the street and shit, and like I fucking, walking home through the bus stop where dudes want to beat me up and shit. I wasn't telling on it. I wasn't talking about it, but like, damn, I go to sleep at night knowing the next morning I'm going to fight at 7:00 in the morning at the bus stop,
Right. Yeah.
Terrifying, bro.
Right. I've been watching members of my family die since I was fucking 8 years old. So it's like, and then you're told like, don't cry. Don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't cry about it. Like, it's like, okay. So you just kind of sit there and just kind of deal with it internally and stuff. But, and it's not for better or for worse, it made me who I am. And I'm okay with that, but I don't want other people to have to fucking go through all the shit. Cause like some people just aren't strong enough. Like trauma affects everyone differently. You know what I mean? And we were raised like you just deal with it. Like you could have it worse, and that's true, and I that's the approach I always took. But just because I could have had it worse doesn't mean what we went through wasn't bad.
That's like a kind of a shitty baseline to use. You know what I mean? Like no matter where you're at, you can say someone could have had it worse. And then myself, like just not to just ramble on about myself or mental health, but like. I was terrible at communication my whole life, whether it was with my parents, whether it was with teachers or with, work, or with partners. And like over the years, luckily, dude, my girlfriend is so dope, man. And like, I've really learned to try to become someone who can communicate, because I've kind of have something that I don't want to ruin, I guess. So like I've had to learn and adapt, and she's been key for me in mental health, as far as just learning to be a happier person by like having those tough conversations. And that's what's lost on people as a whole today, though. I think it's not having the tough conversations. Like if you want to quit a job, dude, do it right. Don't just disappear. Or, you want to break up with somebody, break up with them. Don't just start acting like an asshole. Or you got an issue with a friend, don't just ghost them, but that's the easy way out. And that's how people, especially a lot of young people, I feel like today go. And it's like having those hard conversations will only grow your person and it will repair any kind of relationships you have. Like, I think that the more people put themselves out there, the more they're going to find fulfillment in their lives. And that goes back to the podcast, dude, where I'm not a singer, dude, and I'm not an artist or like a painter or whatever. But like, I'm like wanted to do this podcast for a while, but I was nervous to do it, and I was man, like I'm the best looking guy. I get on camera. I hate my voice. I've always hated my voice, but fuck it, dude. I'm just gonna put this out there, and my life is better because of it.
Yeah, that's just it. And I think that's the common thread, though. The common thread like is just to show people how normal we are, or how normal everyone is, even with all their issues or with all their creativity. Like they're just like you and I. Like I had a pretty big musician on recently, Lenny Lashley, and I had no business. I didn't ask him anything. Everything he shared, on his own free will, and like he explained how important recovery was to him. Like if I was an interviewer, I probably would have never been able to have him he would probably never shared that if it was like a regular interview. You know what I'm saying? Like the conversation and opening up to one another is what gets everything going.
Well, that's why I think podcasts are so popular with the people that they're popular with. Like I think people are starved for real interaction, not just like clickbait headlines and sound bites, right? Like
I don't know. That's what everybody uses, though.
I make clips and stuff and try to draw people in, but
no, not like that. But I mean, like we were saying with Joe Rogan, like a lot of people, something will be said on his podcast, and it will be taken out of context, and they'll just use that one piece instead of like the whole conversation. You know what I mean? Like the whole conversation leading up to that one piece, and that's what they'll do to kind of like villainize the guy. You know what I'm saying?
Right, but the people who listen to him aren't there for that, though. You know, like the
Right,
people,
right.
like people, you can go on TMZ and on Twitter and on, you know, your 142 characters on Twitter or whatever. Or just you scroll through Instagram and it's just picture, highlight. But like to really listen to interesting people, right? Listen to successful people. Listen to people who are not successful, people who have lost it all, whatever it is, just to hear them have a casual conversation, you're going to get more out of it, right? Like you're saying
Oh yeah, absolutely.
that musician dumped stuff on you that he wouldn't have if you were just reading from your thing, like, yo, how did you become a musician? What's your favorite fucking song? Who was your favorite band growing up?
Right. And I feel like that's what you're going to get with a lot of interviews kind of thing. That's yeah.
Right, and where this comes out to be something completely different, like you have no idea what direction it's going to come to, and that in itself has kind of been a path for me, right? Because I had no background in radio or TV. I didn't go to school for it, and then when I started having people on the show, it's like, man, how do I make this not an interview, right? How do I make this a
Right.
conversation, especially with other people? Like when I first started, people who aren't used to being interviewed or whatever, and they're nervous, right? So I got to find a ground where I can make myself not nervous and make the guests comfortable, and let's just fucking talk, man. You know, it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah, the art of facilitating a conversation is definitely an art, you know what I mean? And you do a good job with it. So I you know, hats off. I mean, we all grow, right? We all grow from the beginning. I noticed things that I was doing after the relaunch, like little things I would like, you know, like I'd have like a nervous laugh about something because I'm like, oh shit, what I just said, is it going to offend them? You know what I'm saying? So like you do little things like that, and then I think you pick up, especially from editing, when you edit stuff, like you pick up on them, and you're like, shit, I got to stop doing that. You know, the ooms and the ahs, and sometimes you know, or the so. Like, I think Dan's a big one. He's like Dan, my cousin Dan from the movie star. He's like so. He always that's his like lead in. You know, so but we all have it. We all have that little thing, and I think as we all progress with doing these, we figure it out and we fix them, you know?
exactly, and it's like when somebody comes into the boxing gym, right? And I'll tell them, they're like, oh, I've only been doing this X amount of time. I've got a lot to learn. I'd be like, well, I've been here 9 years. I got a lot to learn. And that guy's been here 20 years. And he's got a lot to learn. And that guy, the coach, he's 70 years old. He's been doing it 50 years. He's got a lot to learn. And that's the same with anything you take on. Man, you should always be evolving and always learning new things. There's really no finality to anything
None.
where there's creative mental space, right?
Right.
If
Yeah.
we're not talking about math where something has to be 2 + 2, if we're talking about anything that has to do from a creative window, man, the second you rest on it, somebody's going to pass you or fall asleep on you, you know?
Right.
So I don't really know what the point to that shit was, other than podcasting is something that is it's in its infancy itself, right? So as we're learning things in our own personal podcast, learning ways to do it better, the whole form is probably going to change as it goes. You know, podcasts have only been around for a short period of time in the big picture of things. And you know that format, like all other formats, is going to change. You know, like your radio has changed, like your TV has changed. And
Right. Yeah, it's definitely everything is a constant evolving. And like you said, with people, if we're not constantly learning, if we think we know it all, then we don't know anything. You know, if we're not willing to organically grow with what we're doing, and that goes for anything. That goes with writing. I've been writing since I was fucking, I don't know, whatever the third grade is, so like 9. You know what I'm saying? I've been writing ever since then, and I'm constantly learning new things about it. And for me, I always thought because I'm still learning things, that means I'm terrible at it. But it's not. It's not the case at all. You know, it makes everyone better at what they're doing creatively, and that's kind of that goes for anything in life. You know,
in your ideal world, what are you writing?
Who
Somebody's handing you a blank check, and they're like, "Yo, Trev, I love your writing, and this, you know, go ahead and do it." What are you writing?
So I spent the last 20 years writing screenplays. Nothing ever got made. I never tried to get anything made. We attempted one short that I wrote, and it fell apart because of like just life, you know. It had nothing to do with like my writing or anything like that. So, but I guess that would be probably the thing I'm most comfortable writing at this point is our screenplays. I have a couple projects on the side that I'm doing that are more, I guess, I don't know. One's like a collection of essays, and then I've got
essay.
yeah, just like a collection of essays, like about my life, things that have happened, how I process stuff like that. You know what it reminded me of? The gentleman you had on, I forgot his name, with the book of poetry.
Yeah, Chris. Yeah.
Yeah, it reminded, like, when he read some of the stuff out of there. It's kind of on the. It's not what I write is not poems at all. But it's on that same spectrum of like a prose almost, where it's like, like each chapter in the thing I'm writing is its own thing, its own story.
Actually, when you bring that up, two things. One, when I was talking to him, right, he's somebody I've known my whole life, but I hadn't really talked to in like 20 years. But I was like, man, Trev and Chris, I thought you guys would have a good episode, man. I thought that was just something that I thought I was doing it. But he's got, in that episode, he was talking about something where he's got this podcast coming out called Jupiter Saloon, and they're all shorts. And it's a bar in Jupiter, and you pay your tab by telling a story. And each episode is just its own short story, dude. I thought it was like the coolest fucking thing I ever heard.
I love that. Because at the end of the day, like, I don't really call myself a writer. I'm a storyteller. So, like, and that's kind of what my podcast is. I'm hearing people's stories. So it definitely, like, when you guys talked about that, I was like, I'm gonna have to keep an eye out for that, because it sounds super interesting.
And as a screenwriter, are they all to any particular genre? Like, I know you're a big horror fan guy, but I don't know if that's like what you write, or if you write.
Sean, I've never written a horror script.
That surprises me. That really surprises me. What do you do? You're writing like the Notebook sequel and shit, dude. You're writing like
lots of that. No, I write. So so when I was a kid, I used to fight a lot, because that's the only way I really knew how to get it out. And from that, when we learned about creative writing, I was like, oh, this is how you do that. And I used to write horror stories when I was a kid, but like the school system, they totally shit on it. They're like, there's something wrong with this kid. He's writing, and then it wasn't even like, it was just little kid shit, like ghost stories and stuff. It had nothing to do. It wasn't like it was bloody or guts or anything like that. So they would like send notes home, and I was already kind of like, I was, they already knew who I like, because I was a kind of a bad kid for, you know what I mean? So like it was just kind of, it just sucked. It sucked, and I stuck out because of it. So I stopped writing altogether. So I never wrote a horror screenplay, probably because of that. Like, I've never really, I do enjoy horror movies. So I write a lot of like kind of, I have two like different genres, I guess you would call it. I write crime, like crime stuff. And then I write like coming of age shit. Like the going home story, like when people go home and they left for a long time, and then they go home and they kind of like whatever they were searching for is at home, that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
You're writing your own happy ending, brother. I love it.
Yeah, trying, it doesn't pan out that way for me in real life, but you know what I'm saying? Like, those are the kind of stories that I like to write. I think I'm good at it, and which is weird because it took me years to realize I was good at doing something. But and like my first screenplay I ever wrote was like a crime action screenplay, and it was it has like a Alice in Wonderland like subliminal thing going on with it. Okay. Yeah, so it's been like I said, I've been doing it for a long time, and then when I decided, it was funny because when I decided I wanted to try something else, like writing a regular story, I kind of forgot all the rules to writing just a story. But I'm hoping this is a big year for like writing, getting a lot of it done.
Awesome, man! I look forward to checking that out.
Yeah.
I like that you said that you grew up fighting, right? Because I did the same, right? Like, we come from that last generation where it wasn't like I got arrested my junior or sophomore year of high school for a fight in the school. Like that I don't even know anyone else that happened to, except this kid's parents wanted to press charges. And the point of my story was that like my mother, even who was anti-violence, hated me for getting in the fight. But she was like, when I was a kid, if someone got their nose busted, they probably deserved as this particular kid did. But we come from that last generation, right? Like I grew up in this neighborhood. I grew up in a town called Jewett City. I don't know if you're familiar with Jewett City.
Yep.
And dude, there was a ton of kids in my neighborhood. So my sister is 7 years younger than me, and by the time she was like a teenager, there was no kids. They didn't exist anymore. But when I was growing up, man, there was a ton of kids, and dude, we would just scrap all the time. We would just always get in fights, and I think that opens up something in you, right? Like. You learn a lot about yourself when your back's against the wall, when nobody's going to help you, or it just. I think you can't really know yourself until you've been in a situation like that, man. I really, anyone who I know who has been, and I don't mean a fighter, right? Like I'm not talking about professional fighters. I'm talking about people who, and I don't mean like bullies. I'm not talking about assholes. I mean it's people who have really. Like I think Fight Club, the movie, actually talked about a lot about this, and it's just like you can know what you're made of, dude, and you can know what you're capable of on the opposite end. And I think that people who I always look at guys like that who I knew who didn't grow up getting in a lot of fights, and I never had the same level of respect I had for the kids from my neighborhood because like Jewett City is a suburb of Griswold, right? So Griswold was like all these richer kids.
Yeah.
And then Jewett City was like all like the poor, lower class kids, and there would be kids that I went to school with who would like, let's say they were athletes and they were like, they could probably beat me up, but they never would. You know what I mean? They never fucking would. And just because they never have been in that position where they had to do something like that,
Right. I don't know. Yeah, I grew up around violence and again, some of it made me who I am today and for better or worse. But I like, and I'm comfortable. This is the worst thing. I think I'm really comfortable around violence.
No, that's not the worst thing, dude, because listen, because violence is the worst thing that can happen to you. So if there's nothing there, there's not a worse thing that could really happen than like somebody coming through my door right now and wanting to do violence onto me. Right. So if you can be comfortable in the worst thing that can happen to you, and I think that's really what I was trying to say is like it's not about the violence, but it's if you can be comfortable in the worst possible situation, then what's a little stress at work or some guy like.
I get what you're saying. So I'm in, and it kind of scares me in a way that I'm comfortable around violence. But I'm a fucking 40, almost 40, whatever. I'm not a violent person anymore, but I know it's there if it has to be. You get what I'm saying? Like no, I know if I'm put in a situation where I feel like my life is threatened, it's there. And it will be okay, and I'll be calm and cool. And that's, like I said, that's to me, like it scares me how calm I can be around violence because and I'm not saying I like it. I don't like it. When I see those videos on Twitter of like the kids beating up somebody or you know what I mean, like that shit, like it turns my fucking stomach. It really does. But I am very. But if I mean, and I've been in some pretty hairy situations. Like I'm just comfortable around it. I'm cool and collective. Now on the same side, or not on the other side of that token, if I spill mustard on my shirt, Sean, I'll lose my fucking shit and probably just trash my apartment. Like it's so weird how like flip flop I am with shit like that. And I don't know. I've worked in bars. I've worked in bars for over 20 years. That plays into it, and especially with seeing some shit. And then growing up, my father was a violent guy. He didn't really. I mean, he beat me a few times, but I didn't live with him or anything like that. But I was just comfortable around violence. I just grew up around it, and then you get people. I've always been the bigger guy, so it's always people want to fucking try to play king of the schoolyard. I never understood it. But people love to play king of the schoolyard. And then
so my my boy Robbie, I got his picture up here. I don't know if you ever met him around Josh or anything, but he was like this monster of a guy, right? And he like we would go out without a doubt, someone would try to fight him, and like he's always getting in fights, and people from the outside be like, "Oh, that guy, he's always getting in fights."
Right.
But I'm like, no, there's this thing where people, little guys, they want to fight the biggest guy in the. It's ridiculous, but it's a real life thing. It's a real thing, right?
No, it is.
You can attest to that. See, right? I'm not saying that I'm pro violence.
Right. I know what you're saying. Like
like with my job, right? I don't think that I could do my job as effectively if I wasn't so comfortable with violence. And the reason I say that, right, so I run a bar that's a packed like college place. I'm not, and this whole thing probably would get me killed if I had a different kind of bar. But I have a packed college place where these kids like to get in little scraps, but they're idiots. But I can stay so calm in that chaos. When you have a place that's 300-400 people, it's packed, they're drunk, and a fight breaks out, dude, I'm not panicking. I see that shit like the Matrix,
Yeah.
But then when it comes to, what's funny is my girlfriend like breaks my balls about this. She's like, how can you be so calm during that? But like when I go to fight, like I've had 2 fights, and both of them, dude, like I freaked out, and it wasn't about fighting the guy. It's like you don't want to go look like an asshole in front of all your friends, but
right.
Like the amount of the last fight I had was in Brockton, and I was warming up in the back, and I literally told the guy Jay was warming me up. I was like, dude, I can't feel my legs. Like I just the anxiety, which is just something I deal with in general, right? Like if I have a doctor's appointment at 9:00 in the morning, I won't sleep that night because I'm like, fuck, I got to be up for 9:00. Like anxiety is something I struggle with, in any possible way you can imagine it. But a bar fight, But like I said, I wouldn't be able to do my job so effectively if I was afraid of a fight in the bar because of the kind of bar that I'm in. And I wouldn't transfer to be like if I was managing a fine dining place, like, oh, because I'm not afraid of a fight, I can do it. It's the particular lane that I'm in. I couldn't do it as effectively without that comfortability. And coming from seeing the guys, like, we kind of talked about it in that podcast I did. Like, you're a Rhode Island guy. You know what kind of guys I'm talking about. Coming from being around those guys and seeing the way that they ran bars in the 90s and the early 2000s, they didn't take no shit. And luckily it hasn't got me sued to this point. But,
That's how I learned how to run bars, too. Right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just...
I tell my bouncers, if we crack a couple heads in April, we're not gonna have to crack a couple heads the rest of the summer, which is not how you should run a bar. But
right. Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. I'm sorry we got on this whole like tangent of that, but
but that's the point. Like, we're just fucking it's a
fair
podcast.
Enough. But yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying with that, and like my thing is when someone tries now, and it hasn't happened. Like I had one instance at a bar that I was running in Tennessee where someone tried to come at me, and it just didn't end well. But I mean, it didn't end poorly. It just didn't end well for him. I didn't like beat his ass or nothing. I just kind of swatted him, and he flew. And he, But like my thing is like, if someone's coming at me, like I understand how big I am. So if somebody's coming at me, they're either like there's something wrong with them in their brain, like chemically, like they're really crazy, or they have a weapon or something. And that's like when I end up getting into some kind, and I haven't, like I said, I haven't been in a fight in years, but when that happens, like I feel like that's my approach. Like someone's like, this guy's trying to kill me. There's no way he's just trying to hurt me because I'm so fucking much bigger than him. Like he knows he's not going to just hurt me. So that's the approach that I take. And so yeah, like, and there's 2 different sides of it, right? If I'm out at the bar and I'm having like drinks and shit with people, if someone, I'll give someone a few chances or whatever, if I'm working in a bar and I see that going on, I go over and I isolate the situation first because I just don't like, no, this isn't going to happen. Like, I know what you're trying to do. This isn't going to fucking happen, and I nip it in the bud. And I'm usually pretty good with my words that people kind of just, okay, I'm going to listen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but like the whole reason why I say like there's 2 different sides of it is because like when you're working in a bar, you're in control Like we're in control. You know what I mean? We are in that position of being in control. So you want to nip it in the bud as fast as you can.
Well, that's a skill that is, I haven't found a way to teach it, right? So when I have my bouncers, it's like isolating a problem before it becomes a problem, right? As much as I'm telling you, like, hey, let's crack some heads in April so we don't have to crack heads in May, June, July, and August. I can just see when it, like, I'll be at the front door, like I got a door guy, and a lot of times I'll hang up that way to try to see what's going on, who's coming in, and I can just be like, this guy's going to be a problem. Like, what did he do? He did nothing. He did absolutely nothing. I know he's going to be a problem. Or you can just see the way people are moving in a crowd. It's just,
you're reading their chemistry. You're reading their body chemistry.
right? And that's not something I've ever been able to show anybody like on how to do. But it's something that my spidey senses go off. I know something's gonna be a problem, and I'm really good at getting in the middle of it and getting proactive on that, right? And
well, much like podcasting, where it kind of just keep it going and it will flush itself out. That's how that is. Like that's not a skill you can just teach. Like,
right. And that's the goal, right? That's the goal, is always being a bar manager, is you don't want the fights. You don't want them between your customers, and you don't want to be in them, even as much as I'm talking. But like, I would rather not be the bar manager, club manager who's screaming, call 911, and everyone else panics. Like, you can panic the whole place, or you can choke a motherfucker out and panic the 50 people that are around you, or 20 people that are around you. You know, that's where I think that skill and that comfortability comes in. Like, you don't want to scream fire and ruin your whole fucking night because some two guys want to get into a fight. And if you're not comfortable in that, you could be the greatest bar manager in the world, X's and O's wise. But then if you're the one who's going to you don't want to call the police when you're managing a bar. Right? You don't never want the police in there for any fucking reason, no matter what. I think that, again, that's to me what goes back to why I can do my job so well, because I don't panic in those situations. But the negative side of it, right, is to where I know this shit does have to come to an end. Do you know the story about me getting maced?
No.
So two summers ago, because last summer didn't exist due to COVID, some guy, he said, I don't have to censor myself. It was one of my bartenders who was off duty at the bar. He told her that he asked if he could jerk off her drink. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. It was something really vile. I'm 99% sure that's what it was. So it was like, of course, hey, bro, you need to go. And he at which point he was like, all right, he was cooperative with it. He was a dick, but he was cooperative with it. But then when my bartender from behind the bar goes like, hey, his card just got declined for his tab. So the guy's like, oh, I've got the money out in my car. I'm like, all right. So I'm like, I'm going to go for a walk outside with him. And I didn't have any security on because it was like a Sunday night. It wasn't like a night where I don't have security. But my bar back was like, hey, you want me to go with you? Because it was this guy and his friend. And I'm like, no, man, I'm good. I'll go. Just go do your job. And it's all good. So I get outside with these two guys. And the guy who in question is like, I'm going to go to get my car and come back. The other guy's going to stay with me to prove that he's not going to take off. So the guy comes back. And I go down I'm up on like some stairs. And I go down the stairs to his car, and he tries to give me a handful of change. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And they were like fake, they were like gaming tokens and stuff. So I threw them into his door was open. I threw him into his car, and he says, all right, asshole. And he fucking pepper sprayed me, bro.
Wow.
Yeah, man. So, when that was terrible. I don't know if you've ever been pepper sprayed, but it was fucking awful. It was
I've only felt residuals of pepper spray.
Yeah, which I had felt, and those sucked too. But this direct shot in the face, like the car was between us, and he but there could have been a gun, man. He could have shot me, right? Like he could have stabbed me. So when my girl and my mother heard that story, they're like, no more going out in the parking lot with fucking people, man. But that's the downside of that comfortability. Like I'm going out there with two guys saying, well, nothing's going to happen. I'll start
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So and that I think sometimes being that comfortable around stuff like that, like there is a fight or flight moment, and we're gonna like, and I'm not saying like actual fight, but like we don't think, we react. You know what I'm saying? So you're like, yeah, it's gonna be fine. Don't worry about it. Where you probably should have done. Like there was a night where I was at a friend's house, and it was a really weird night. And I seen like there was somebody outside the fucking window. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I banged on the window, and the guy like, whoa, you took off. So my buddy goes and he grabs his gun, I run outside in the fucking 3 o'clock in the 2 o'clock and whatever it was, midnight or whatever. I run outside like this guy could have had a gun. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
it was just somebody who was lost. But regardless, like it was a weird situation, and I could have I don't think sometimes I just because of that whole being comfortable around, and it's not like it was when we were kids either. People will just shoot you now. Like
Yeah,
I've seen it happen. So
and that's really just the thing is that there is a big downside to it. And I am going to be 40 this year, and I can't just be going out in the parking lot with somebody. You know, like I said, that guy was willing to pepper spray me over a $17 fucking tab. Like,
right.
Like I still can't get over that. That somebody that would be like somebody's. I hadn't even like threatened like, oh, I'm going to fuck you up for this money. I hadn't even done anything. I was just like, I was being probably rude to the guy. I'm like, listen, asshole, you got to pay your tab.
Right.
But he was in literally the car was between us. He could have gotten in the car and left, And if I had at least had like my bar back had come out with me, I'd at least been smart to take him up on it. Maybe that wouldn't have happened or whatever.
You never know. It's just, and people are just so unpredictable, especially when they get in those situations where if you're calm, you're thinking a little more. You're thinking more than they are. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's just I gave up being security at bars and stuff a few years ago because it's just like it's a young man's game. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna I definitely couldn't do it. Now I'm about to be 40. Like I don't, you know what I mean? Like I don't want to. I'll run it. Obviously I don't want to run a bar right now because the industry's in the shitter. But yeah. So, but I don't see how. It's just I don't know how to explain any of it. Like back in the day, like when we would do this stuff, like I would run a bar, like just security, and people are like, oh, what do you do? Like they're like, oh, I'm a cook and I do this at night, or people will be like, oh, I paint houses, and they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, this is what I do. Like I made good money being a doorman. You know what I'm saying? Because I've been doing it. I did it for so long. And I learned from those old school guys. So I have that old school like mentality of it. And I know how to keep it professional. And I know how to keep it like, just keep it the way you need to be kept until there's a lot of guys that just want to crack skulls. And if you're depending on the venue you're working, that works. But you don't want people just beating people up every fucking weekend down on the beach. You know what I mean?
Right. You don't want people being afraid to go to your bar because like, oh, I might get too drunk and the bouncer's going to beat me up. Right? You don't want that either. To me, security is like such an underutilized and underappreciated position. And, finding like I've had very few guys who are like really that right combination of excellent customer service, can handle things, but when it's time to turn up the heat, they know how to turn up the heat and when to turn up the heat, right? Yeah. Like that's why like that door guy position is so important, right? Like if you get a group of 20 girls who show up and they're like, yo, cut us a deal on the cover charge, you gotta be smart enough to know, all right, we want these 20 girls to fucking come in here. Let's figure something out. Or if you get a couple of guys who show up and like I said, just that sickness, like, oh, these guys are gonna be problems. Just tell them, hey guys, sorry, you guys can't come in tonight. And you gotta have a lot of balls to do that because if they haven't done anything wrong, you really got to explain that why, or you come up with a dress code and get yourself in trouble.
Right. So, but yeah, man, that's right. You want your door. You basically like your doormen are the face of the business. You want them to be, you want them to know what they're doing, and you want them to be polite, and you want them in and out, and so
this conversation is one of my favorite ever on the show, just so you know, man. I absolutely love this.
I feel like wherever I go, I always derail the conversation into like 20 different directions.
No, it's fucking great, dude. Just because we're similar in that way. We've both done some of the same jobs. We both kind of came up some of the same way with like the time and frame we grew up. We're the same age, so it's just it's fun to talk about. And we both do fucking podcasts. I mean, we should just be a couple. That's the way it looks,
Yeah, no doubt, man.
Trev, how long have you been shaving your head for? Fuck some mental health of my own, but I need to ask you that question.
I think I started doing it in 2006 or 7.
Okay.
I think I remember I was at a bar and I was looking. I was looking in the mirror, and I'm like, "It's it. It's got to come off."
So I've been feeling that way for years, right? Like I just kind of been fighting it, and I've been afraid to do it. And it's only been a week. Last Wednesday, I think, or Tuesday or Wednesday.
It
whatever.
looks good, my friend. It looks good.
Well, yeah, but like I still feel super. Like I've been going to the gym, and I'm like like Planet Fitness, and I'm happy that I have my mask on, and maybe no one knows it's me. I'm like still nervous. I'm like really nervous to see people. And this will be the first podcast that comes out. I did the MMA one the other day, but I was kind of sitting further back, and I had the headphones up. I don't think you could tell as much, but this is my media debut.
Yeah, I know. It looks good.
Of the dome, bro. And I've been. I don't know if they've been wanting to do it for a long time because I don't want to do it at all. But I've been fighting the necessity to do it for quite some time. So I've been like trying to feel out my other bald brothers on how long they've been doing it and the mental process of it.
When I first started doing it, I felt like it didn't look good on me.
Mm-hmm.
And it probably didn't. Like I said, I went through this whole like I feel like I look like Uncle Fester, you know, stage, and then I kind of grew into it in a way, I guess. But
it's like there's no fighting it now. I'm old. I'm officially old.
Yeah.
Like this was like a true marker to where like there's
me in the gray. That's me in the gray. I'm finally letting that, maybe because I'm wearing masks, so I see no point in dyeing my beard. But
I'll say I dyed my beard, which I've done before anyway. But like I had to do it because one, I was growing the beard out and I fucked it up. Which as a beard guy, you know that's a constant struggle, like not fucking up your beard. When I shaved my head, the beard was really low, and I have like all kinds of colors going on, but most of it is light blonde. And then I got big patches of gray on the side. And I was like, no, if I'm going to have the shaved head, dude, I have to have the dark beard down below. I said, I'm not ready to go bald head, gray beard. Maybe if it was all gray, but like patchy, like those dudes who can just rock that fucking gray fucking silverness, but like some gray here, some red, some brown. Like, you know, dude, this has to be on point if this is going to be fucking gone.
So I had like right here was like, this is great. This is great for your podcast. Right here was like a patch, and the rest of it was still dark for a long time. That's why I started using like the Just for Men or whatever. Yeah, and I made sure it matched like my eyebrows.
Sponsor both of us.
Yeah. And I made sure it matched my eyebrow. You know what I mean? Like I didn't go like B. Wilson fucking, you know, jet black beard or anything like that. Like I went to my normal dark brown, but I did that because it just looked weird where just I didn't like just having a patch, but now it's like kind of the whole chin. So maybe I'm like, well, and I stopped dyeing it, like I said, because like I'm wearing a fucking mask. Why am I going to waste my money on dyeing my beard? You know, I thought about doing it for your podcast, but you know.
Well, no, but I think that this all ties into the kind of mental health that gets overlooked for guys, right? Like, because it's like, you gotta be like to spend money to dye your beard, like both of us talked about doing. Like, that's an insecurity, or that's like, you know, caring to a point where you're falsely altering your image, right? Like, I think I'm still currently really insecure when I go out about the shaved head. Although it's starting. Like
it looks good on you, man. I tell you,
it's getting there. At least mentally, it's getting there. I need to like get some more color on my fucking dome because I feel like I just have to, like you said, this pale ass Uncle Fester thing fucking going on.
Yeah. You picked if you can survive this winter with it, then you can survive it anywhere. You know.
Well, I don't work in the winter, so it was a better time for me to test drive it. Right, like less people are going to see me than like shaving my head in the middle of the summer, and then everyone's like, oh my god, like I don't want that reaction. Like if I can come into the year, like the summer where like few people come in, I see a few more people come in my life, like than just fucking doing it in the middle of summer, bro. Like I think this was the move. But I've been rocking a winter hat, like because my fucking head gets cold. I walked my dog the first time, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, it feels weird the first time, you know, the wind and shit. Yeah. That's funny. No, man, it looks good on you.
Just shout out my sponsor, Beard Octane. Check them out on all your social media platforms at Beard Octane or at beardoctane.com. If you've got a beard that's in its growth stage like me, you got a thicker one like Trev or like my man Connor up here, you got to get on Beard Octane. They got oils, lotions, combs, and my man Trev, since he has such a beautiful beard and he's a guest on this show, I'm going to be sending you a gift package courtesy of Beard Octane. So go check out beardoctane.com. Code Shamrock10 for 10% off your order. Trev, love your beard, bro.
Thank you, sir.
I like your beard.
But yeah, no, so you guys can, if you want to listen, it's the Struggling Artist Podcast. We drop on Tuesdays, wherever you listen to podcasts. I have a different guest every week. Sometimes it's guests from the past that come back and want to talk, and if they got something to promote or whatever, we always do that. So, yeah, it's like I said, it's a conversation. It's a lot of fun. You know, I've had people that are like, I've had like the Dave from Dopey podcast on, and he's got a huge podcast. He's been on as a guest, and we talked about all sorts of things with him, and I've had Lenny Lashley, Boston musician, Mark Lind from the Ducky Boys. Like I've had some, I don't know. It's been pretty New England based right now. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it has something to do with being home, but coming home, but you know, it's going well. It's going well. And, you know, Sean Shamrock's been on a few times. So, you know.
And what's you're on Facebook now with the podcast, yeah?
Oh yeah.
It's just the Struggling Artist on Facebook.
Yeah, just the Struggling Artist Podcast on Facebook, on Instagram and Twitter. It is at Podcast TSA. Yeah, my personal Twitter is TrevAllen81 if you want to check out some of the other stuff I got going on.
And I recommend following you on Twitter for sure, especially like you've got a great cultivated podcast group. So if you're listening to this and you have a podcast, or if you have a podcast that's like, and it's not on Twitter, or if it is, you should get there, because there's this great community of podcasts that support each other and shit on Twitter. And you put me onto that. I want to shout out some of the great podcasts you put me on to, like The Movie Seller and our friend Chris Williams and the We Need to Talk podcast.
I love their show, man. Yeah, they came out of the gate swinging, and I love it.
Yeah, like that's another one where I try to catch it, but it's like there's so much going on. But you know, I try to catch at least some of the episode all the time. But you know, on Twitter, man, everyone supports each other, man.
I will say, as far as social media, Twitter's probably the best for networking with podcasts.
100%.
Yeah,
100%, man. That's what's up, bro. Yo, so I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming through. I love your podcast, Trev Allen, the Struggling Artist. Check him out.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
This episode of the Shamrock Show is brought to you by the Second Chance Gym in Preston, Connecticut, an old school boxing gym with a new school flavor. Go see the head trainer, Jody, down there, and he'll sort you out, whether you're looking to get comfortable in violence like me or just comfortable in some jeans. That will set you up, whether you want to be a trained fighter or just somebody looking to get in shape. The Second Chance Gym, Preston, Connecticut. Check them out on Facebook.